Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Women on Top. Bindu Subramaniam is a singer, songwriter, CEO, and co founder of SaPa, short for the Subramaniam Academy of Performing Arts. Bindu has been described as a third generation prodigy, treading her own path, a Gen Next achiever to look out for, and a prominent Karnataka woman educating differently. She chairs the Bangalore chapter of the All India Management Association's Young Leaders Council. Bindu and her brother Ambi were named among GQ's 25 most influential young Indians this year, and she was also named among Business World's 40 under 40 and is quite clearly a disruptive woman and entrepreneur. Bindu, welcome today, and thank you for joining me. So,
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here because you are such a boss.
oh.
So this is very fun for me.
Well, today is all about you, and I want to hear your story. So, you, like me, graduated with a law degree and then went on to have a career in music. And I went on to have a career in restauranting. So clearly, we left our sort of legal degrees behind. And but take us through that journey and what was the idea behind starting SaPa?
So I always say that law is like my dirty little secret. And I kind of ended up there because I read too many John Grisham novels as a child. So I kind of had this feeling that I would be so excited about like 85-hour, corporate law office work. And then when I was in like my second year of law school, I'm like, this is not what I want to do in life. And then, like a good responsible child, my parents are like, finish your degree. I finished my degree. And then they're like, you have a bachelor's, get a master's. So I got a master's. And then I'm like, now what? And then but I was always kind of very sure that that whatever I did after my second year of law, I was very sure that whatever I did, it wouldn't be law. So I got very excited in the idea of music and music business, and I had always been performing, but I had never kind of seen it as a career. So actually, the first business that I started out of college was after I did this songwriting and music business at Berkeley. I was like, how do I do music business? Because that felt exciting to me. I started a company called Subramaniam Entertainment. And that was basically just a way to organize all the different musical activities we did in a business, whether it's like publishing or performing or releasing music. But at some level, I had always been very passionate about being an educator. Like my grandfather was a music teacher who used to go by bicycle to teach kids in Sri Lanka. Uh, and there was just and my mom used to kind of write books, and there was this whole kind of background of music education. And I felt like that was a really powerful way to be giving back. And you know what it's like once your kids are born, you kind of relook at the world in a different way. And
Absolutely.
I felt like it was a good opportunity to get into music education, get into kind of seeing the way that kids learn and seeing how we could make music more accessible. Because when you're looking at things through the eyes of a child, you start reflecting back on the challenges that you had. And I was probably a terrible student. I mean, like if you find any of my teachers, I'm sure they'd be like, yeah, her, did she do well? I'm kind of surprised. So we started reflecting on everything that went wrong and how we can fix it for our kids. And I think that's how I became this sort of accidental music educator.
So, like you mentioned, you've got this sort of the education aspect of it, but you did set up a business as well. So, can you explain the business model and how does the sort of business side work as well as the educational aspect and the social aspect of it?
Yeah. So I always say I'm an extremely accidental entrepreneur. I never set out to do something. And I think sometimes as women, we don't give ourselves enough credit. Like I have this incredible imposter syndrome to this day where I'll be sitting in a room and I'm like, do I really belong here? I don't really know what's going on. When my daughter was 2 months old, I was convinced that I had become so stupid that I just went and wrote the GMAT because I was like, I am very sure, like I need a piece of paper to tell me how stupid I am at this point. So when I got into it, I was thinking of impact, right? I was thinking very ambitiously about how I can make the world a better place and all of those things. And so I spent months working on this first textbook of music for babies. Okay, I was like, how do we teach classical music to babies in a way that would excite them and inspire them? And I was testing out paper thickness, and every time I would see a small child, I'd put this book very creepily into their hands and see how they would react to it. And oh, the paper is too thin, they're able to tear it. Oh, it's too thick, now they're not able to hold it. What is the size? It has to go in the bag. So it was such a passion project that I wasn't thinking in terms of business at all, to be honest. And I don't think that I had that skill set. And then we had like 5 students or 6 students at SaPa. And then I go to the printer with this book that I'm absolutely in love with. And he's like, "Madam, minimum 500 books." So I'm like, okay, so what do I do now? So my option 1 is to kind of go down to Printo or Printcall and be like, "Hey boss, can you give me 5 spiral bound copies of this?" Or I can. So I went and took a loan from my dad to make these books. And of course, nobody bought them. And I was like going from crossword to baby oi to first cry to Flipkart, like somebody stocked these books. And that was also the time, like 2013, when Landmark and all of these big stores were moving away from books and music and into toys. So it was like the worst time ever. That's when bookstores kind of stopped being about books. So it was such a learning process for me to mess up so many things so spectacularly at the same time. And then we decided that, okay, maybe we can be like Scholastic and distribute through schools. And then we went and they're like, "This is a terrible idea, but can you teach music?" And then we're like, yeah, maybe we can. So then we started begging people and training them, teaching them and putting. So for so long, I was just looking at impact.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized at some point, and this is a very hard thing and something that I struggle with even now, that in order to create the impact that you want to create, you need to be in control of your own destiny. So I can either spend 80% of my time begging someone else to give me money for charity, or I can work my blank off and make the money that I need to do the good work that I want to do. And so it's kind of this shift that happens where you realize that business isn't evil. Because sort of as women sometimes are coming from conservative families, or even being musicians, right? Being an artist, art is the highest thing, and then it's not a commercial thing, it's your commune with the divine. And I believe all of that, but at some point it becomes so ingrained in you that you're almost apologetic about the fact that you're running a business or that you're doing something that is creating.
Yeah,
exactly. So this is something that I struggled with for so long. And then I was like, hey, you know what? Let's look at numbers, but let's look at all the numbers. Impact happens when we make money.
right.
And there's a sort of positivity associated with doing well. So it was a long journey, and I think I'm somewhere in the middle of it still, but I'm much less apologetic about saying that this is a business. There is charity too, but there is also business.
That's really interesting, actually, that you know how to come to terms with that. And that was something that I found so interesting about what you're doing, because music is that, there's that whole left brain, right brain. And in my industry, as which is hospitality and restauranting, I always find that, the chefs are the creative ones and they have no business sense, like no business sense. And then I'm, that's where sort of I come in, where I have no creativity when it comes to, cooking and food. But I kind of, we figured out over time what works from a business perspective. And so that's really interesting that you kind of had to sort of grapple with both aspects, I guess. And so tell us a little bit more then about how you went on to develop that business aspect, and where you started generating revenue from then.
So at some point, and I know this sounds really stupid, but I'm okay with sounding stupid once in a while, we realized that it was a viable business. So we started signing up with schools. And in the first year, we did only 4 schools as a pilot, because from my perspective, I wanted to make sure it worked. We chose 4 different types of schools that were close enough that we could drive to, and then we delivered the books and we could jump in and do spot checks. And honestly, that first year, I took like 1,000 exams myself. I listened to 1,000 children singing on different days to kind of figure out, okay, this is the baseline quality of our program. And then we saw that people wanted to sign up more. And then we're like, hey, maybe we can talk to more schools. And then we realized very quickly that it was financially viable. And I'll be honest, at that point, I didn't understand what the numbers were. I wasn't looking at balance sheets, and we were a really small team. So it's not like I had somebody else who was doing finance, but it was just in my gut. I knew that this was working because schools were coming back, kids were happy, and at the end of the day, the checks weren't bouncing. And then we kind of progressed to getting larger and larger. And at some point, we realized that, okay, this is exciting, and we started getting approached by sort of VCs, and we started getting approached by other people, and that's extremely flattering. But if you're where I am and I've got no business sense, it's also terrifying. I'm like, what do I do now? Like, do how does this work? Do I give you my, do you want my company? Is this how? So there was kind of this panic that ensued. And I was like, okay, we don't need funding now, but we do need to understand where we are and how we're going and what our trajectory is, and how we're going to, how, in some sense, how I'm going to do right by SaPa, because this is an idea that works. We've got the in-school program that's working, and that's a business. And our entire kind of after-school program through our centers was still run through our family trust at that point. So it was completely charitable. So we're looking at this one business aspect of it, and we're looking at the charitable aspect of it, where we're just looking at creating the next generation of musicians. And this is scaling really well. Suddenly we're 10 centers there. And then I get a call from our auditor one day saying, hey, you know what? This actually shouldn't be a charity. Like legally speaking, and like every other way that we're speaking, you're not taking money out of it. And I respect that. But I think we should merge the two as a separate business entity. And we need to look at your charity as a completely separate thing.
Right.
So that again was like, wait, are you saying I need to be doing less charity? He's like, no, I'm not saying you need to be doing less charity. I'm saying that we need to streamline what your business and your charity looks like. And then at that time also, we joined the Stanford Seed Transformation Program, which was amazing. Like truly, truly, I cannot give enough credit to that. And that was the first time that we kind of sat down, and I'm sitting in a group with other entrepreneurs. And we all realize how lonely it is to be an entrepreneur at some point. And we're all looking at scale, and we're kind of unashamedly saying that, yeah, we want to make the world a better place by scaling our businesses.
Right.
So then we're like, okay, so what are our business plans? How does our business model work? How much do we charge different schools? How do we make something that is affordable to everybody, but at the same time, people who can afford to pay more, we're giving them an option that is viable for them. And then we just started carving out different ways. And then we thought we had all our answers. We were going to become the cult for culture. We needed to have 100 centers because, everybody wants to go out and learn music, culture. It's so important. And then the pandemic hit, and we're like, holy cow, what now? Because we've gone around telling everybody for the last decade that music should be learned face to face. It's about being in the same room as your teacher, and all this online stuff is rubbish. Like, it'll never take off. And then we're like, oh, okay, so about that.
Yeah.
And then overnight we had 3 days to take 10 centers and bring them online. And teachers who are like the kind, when they're on a WhatsApp video call with you, you're looking up their noses or at their foreheads. And so we're working overtime to kind of figure out how to make this something that works. And then at the back of my mind, it's also, how do we make this not a poor plan B? Because everything that I felt still stands, right? So there are certain things that we can't do online, but what are the things that we can do online that we couldn't do?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And then what we saw was that our centers were, because schools were obviously really badly hit, and that was that was our business, right? So that was a huge challenge for us to overcome. And suddenly have 70 teachers on our payroll, and these are our people, this is our family, we have to take care of them, but we're not generating any revenue right now, so what do we do? And then we saw that our B2C model just exploded. And that went off so well. But in that interim period where we were struggling, the most powerful thing was the community that we had of our teachers. We had a lot of our teachers are like doctors, lawyers, engineers, people like you and me who wake up one day and decide that they don't want to be part of this corporate madness and they want to do something else. And so I was getting calls saying, hey, you know what? You guys haven't cut salaries, but if you want to, it's okay. I can go without salary for this many months. And I'm like, wow, okay. And then we get calls from other people saying, you know what, I can do sales calls, or you know what, uh, I know how to edit video, or I can, and just it was this beautiful feeling of people stepping up.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gave us more josh to be like, yes, we can build this business back up. It can be different. It doesn't have to be cult for culture. We won't be 100 centers, but we will do something. We will create impact. And for me, it is always that sort of balance of running this business and reaching students and making something powerful there and taking care of teachers, because I feel like musicians and music educators as a community, they need to be protected. They need to be.
And, I mean, you're not the only one who kind of had to figure out the whole digital space overnight.
Really? I thought it was just me.
I mean, we're restaurateurs. We're used to people coming in, and then we suddenly were like, oh my God, we have to look at delivery, and we have to look at people ordering online, and we're going to not be seeing whom we're serving. And this is just really crazy. But I think that, like you said, you have to make that work and not seem like a plan B, and do that really well, and kind of take what that offers you. And one of the things that we found was that it suddenly gave us access to chefs and students all over the world. So we started doing these workshops online, which we used to do in person earlier, at our studio, and we were able to now reach like a wider audience. And I'm sure the same thing happened with in your space. And of course, in the last 2 years, EdTech has completely exploded. So how has that kind of enhanced? And do you see this now as something that will work in parallel to what you do as you start coming back to, a more in-person format? I mean, are these now two things that are sort of going to coexist for your, for the, for the business?
I think the future is some sort of hybrid model. So a few months ago, we launched our learning management system, our online learning platform. And now we're teaching people through that. We're teaching live classes around the world, but we've also kind of launched these asynchronous sort of masterclass format with people like, Usha Utup and Anup Jalota and my mom, Kavita Krishnamurti. And it's really nice to see how people are engaging with that content. And we see that there is a huge audience for that also, where either I want to learn to sing like Ushaji, or maybe on a Friday night, I want to decompress and kind of get into my nostalgia mode and see how that works. And I think there will always be a place for that now. And when we're looking at live classes in person, I think that another way that this is going to happen is have these physical interactions where we're kind of looking at physical interactions as learning, but also as, your social and emotional fix. And then you go back home and you're also used to kind of working asynchronously and finding this material and continuing and doing things like that. As far as the business model goes, I think it's great because it's opened up the whole world for us. And more technology inevitably means an ability to scale. And the edtech market right now is incredible. So we are looking at our first fundraise as well. So I think it's a very exciting time to be doing innovative things. And I think it's really great, and at the same time a little terrifying to see how many people are here and what they're thinking. And for us, sometimes it's fun because we're like, we've got 10 years of experience and we know how some of this plays out. And there's a lot of stuff that we haven't figured out, but there is a lot that we have. So if for us, teacher training, content creation, all of those things are kind of stuff that we've worked on a lot. So it's really nice to see the prominence that sort of stuff is getting now. But then when the big bad guys come into music education, it can be scary at times. So we'll see.
Completely lose your soul either, right? So yeah. But I mean, tell me, just in terms of the industry as well, and since you're also a performer, how has the last sort of couple of years been for musicians in terms of, were they able to kind of switch to a digital format, or is it just that we're all waiting for live performances to come back?
Honestly, for most musicians that I know, it was sort of traumatic. And so many were in denial. Like they're like, okay, you know what? Things are canceled this week, but I'm not unpacking my suitcase because for the last, I don't know how many decades, I've been traveling 3 weeks in a month. And then slowly realizing that it's getting extended beyond. And again, there's no real plan B in place. And for me, I kind of, what I liked about it was an opportunity to kind of work on my music without deadlines. It was an opportunity to explore different things. And then of course these online concerts started happening, and immediately we saw the spike where everybody's online all the time. And Friday night, if you kind of go on Instagram, you see that 73 of your musician friends are online and doing lives, and then there's fatigue that sets in there. And then people are panicking, saying, wait, how do we monetize? Because for so many musicians, or most of them rather, they survive off of concert income. And the moment that that's gone, and there was no good mechanism to sort of monetize these online concerts, it's just kind of their way to share and interact with fans, and sort of feel like their fans are still out there, or that they're still relevant. And but I think we are morphing in a way that content creation is changing. I see so many of our kids that we've been working with, since they were babies, now coming into their tweens and teens, and looking at being creators. And that's so interesting to me, because like when we were kids, maybe the pinnacle would have been a stadium show, or performing at the Royal Albert Hall or something like that. And now the pinnacle is to be like a creator with 1 million followers on Instagram. And that's, and I know that it's easy to discredit that and say it's about the makeup and it's about this, but also there's a lot of work that goes into being a creator, and it's so multidisciplinary. So I look at my own daughter sometimes, she's 10, and she's kind of working on piano and violin and gymnastics and singing and songwriter, and she doesn't study very much, and she doesn't practice, and it's terrifying to be a mom of a tween because you're so sassy. But at the same time, she's building this unique skill set for herself that is not something that I've pushed on her. And I see so many of these other kids. I have some other students who are kind of like painting and songwriting, and one of them is like, I'm influenced by this K-drama, so I'm doing a whole series of songs about murder, but it's artistic. And I'm like, okay, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so this whole idea of creativity and artistic expression is so interdisciplinary now. So, and I think that the youngsters, I mean, I feel antique when I'm saying this, but I still think I'm relevant in some sense. They're just opening it up totally. So I know that concerts will come back. I know people will come on stage. I know that the senior level of artists who have had gigs and performed festivals, and people like us, will go back and do our own thing. But I think this has sort of accelerated that new way of creation, and there's no going back from there. So if we look at what these new creators or these people who become influencers will turn around and do on stage, and how their hybrid model will work, I'm very excited to see how that works. And I don't know how it's going to play out yet.
No, I mean, that's incredible. I think there's so much opportunity and innovation happening that I think it's really exciting times. So Bindu, I mean, just what would you say to musicians, artists today, whether they're sort of thinking about learning, whether they're already established, what would be your kind of 2 cents to them?
So my standard thing that I've been saying for the last decade, very honestly, is like, work hard every day in the right direction. Make sure that you're doing something. I mean, you can't sit on your couch and hope that you're going to reach there, because it's all about waking up every day and grinding. And I subscribe to that. But now, like over the last few months, I've been like, also don't take yourself too seriously, because there's so much you're not in control of. You get up, you work hard, and then just kind of let it go, because you might have this ambition of where you want to end up, but just make sure you're building your skill sets, because you don't know where you're actually going to end up.
Absolutely. Listen, it's been so much fun talking, and I love what you're doing, and kudos to you, and really good luck with the race, and amazing. So, and I hope we can meet in person and listen to you someday so soon.
I hope so too. It was such a pleasure. This totally made my day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.